Hello everyone. In this section, we are going to see about use context and use reduce hooks. So let's create the components first, and then we will be creating a global context, and we will feed the state along with the API, along with the setter functions of the state to all the components. Okay, so now we have our components ready. So this is the parent component. So for this example, this is the root component, and we have three child components inside it. What we are going to do is we are going to just have one number as a state using context API. So all these three children will be having their actions. They can even modify the state. They will listen to the state in real time. At the same time, when any one of these guys modify the state, we are going to immediately reflect that in everyone. So that's what we're doing now. Now let's create the context. So this global context is going to um, actually let's call it um, context provider. As you can see, this is actually a React component which we are going to use to wrap. So instead of this div, we are going to use this component. We have to wrap using this provider component around all the children, so that these child components will be able to access the state and the, the, the global state. So this guy is going to get some children and he's going to just render it. Let's give some type to it. Now instead of this, let's import that and use that. Now we have to create the context. So initial state is going to be just a 0, but in actual apps, this initial state may have some complex data like arrays, objects, nested objects, etc. For this example, we are just going with one number. The default value is going to be count and initial state. Let's create a reducer to deal with the state. So we are going to have a type. The action type, we are going to allow the child components to pass any one of these actions. So we are going to allow the children to either add or subtract or reset the number back to 0. So this is a reducer function which is going to get a state, which is the count, and and an action. So just like the reducer in our JavaScript array, which gets an array and actually multiple values, and it reduces them into one value. So that's what this reducer will also do. It gets a state and the action we need to process, we need to do on the top of the state, and it's going to return back a new state, an updated, a processed state. We're going to use a switch statement. The key is going to be action.type, and so if it's add, we're going to return state plus 1, and let's do it for other two cases. A good thing about using TypeScript is that it gives this IntelliSense for everything. It's very useful. For sub, we're going to minus 1. For reset, we're going to just send return 0. If the consumer of this context API sends anything else other than these action types, you are going to throw an error. So this is the reducer we have. Now let's create the let's use reducer. The use reducer will get one reducer function and the initial value. The initial value is just 0, and the reducer function, what it happens is that if we send in this order, first action I want an add, second action I want a sub, or so I'm accessing this reducer in this order, right? The initial value is 0. First one, it is 0 and we get the add. So it comes here, it increments. So now the state will become 1. Here the state will become 2. Here the next request the state will become 3, and here state will become again become 2. We will see it in action. So this children we have to wrap using provider, and also we will be sending the value to it. The value we are going to send or the count, which is, as we are seeing, it is the actual state, and this dispatch. So the dispatch is the API I was talking. We will dispatch changes like this. Dispatch is a function. Dispatch, and we'll be passing an object which can have one of these. So this is how we will be accessing from the children. So we are passing the count and dispatch through the value. And okay, so while creating the context, we have given the count. Let's also add dispatch here. A dispatch is going to be a function which returns nothing. Okay, let's pass some types. Count is going to be number, and the dispatch is going to be a dispatch of, again, the dispatch is going to have a type with the action type. The action type is the one we have right here. Oops. Okay. Okay. Now let's go to the child and let's see if we can access the data. So for creating the context, we use create context, and for creating using the reducer hooks, we used use reducer, and for accessing the data, we are going to use context hook. And the context, oops, okay, and we have to export this global context. So this is what we use. We have to pass inside this use context hook. So this is a named export, and here we can destructure the count as well as the dispatch. Let's just see if, okay, okay, child 1 0. Let's try modifying the initial state 1. Okay, okay, I'm going to have a button here, and on clicking that button, I'm going to dispatch an action. Dispatch an action. A dispatch is going to have a type. As I said in the example, we can use this. And the TypeScript will make sure that it won't allow anything else to pass. So this is a great thing, that it is not assignable to the type action type. So that gives us good sense of security that things won't break. This is a plus. Let's have a break here. And I'm going to copy paste to the, okay, let's just check this one. Okay, it's 0 in the beginning and it increments. So I'm going to actually make the other children to do the same, to do different actions. Okay, maybe let's just copy paste the whole thing. File 2, and here I'm going to send the sub type. Here I'm going to send the reset. We'll be getting good intelligence also. I think we are good here. Okay, here let's have reset. So this is the project we have now. So the initial state is 0. Let's have a break here. So these are the numbers. This is the child name. So I can increment it, I can decrement it, and I can reset it. So just to summarize, the state lives somewhere separate. The state lives in common to all the children, including the parent also. If we want, we can even access the state here, right here. And even inside a nested component, if we have some 4 levels of inner components, they can even access the good thing is that we don't, it used to be like, so without context, this here maybe we have to pass a prop called count, and if we want the count to be accessed by some other further inner children, we have, that's called prop drilling. So we use, we it used to be that way. And the context also was made much more simpler with the introduction of these hooks. Before that, instead of this hook, we were asked to just like this provider, there was something called a consumer. We can get this global context and we have to wrap the component using a consumer. Even now we have something called a consumer here. If I type, we have the consumer. That creates unwanted nested further nests, right, which is not needed when we use the context. So this is a small project, but we have also seen, and also I need to talk about this use reducer hook. Use reducer almost works like use state, and also we have this API. It's an interface, right? The state is safe behind this API, which we cannot do anything with. For instance, in use state, we can do anything. We can um, even set a value to it. We can just set a 0, set to whatever we want, but here the state is safe behind this interface. We cannot do anything other than these actions, and also the logic lies here. So we safely expose one API to these customers, to these components to use, so which makes it a very bit more robust architecture. And also a difference between use state and use reducer, one more thing is that when we have a very simple state to manage, we can go for use state. But when this mechanism works really good with, if we have a complex object here instead of one, I wanted to just focus on the techniques instead of dealing with data, so I kept this way. But reducer helps us to use manage much more complex state. I have another video on this, an elaborate video on this context API. So I have this context in this project. We deal with considerably complex object here, so you can go see the video, watch the video, and then also we can see the code. Here you can see, and I wrote this in JavaScript, TypeScript, I prefer much better. Complete. So here, as you can see, we have separate files for actions, constants, and reducer. This is the reducer, and we are also using an amazing library called Immer.js, which is my favorite, one of the favorites these days. Last year, so we were I was so in this project we had a much more complex state. We had the initial state. Instead of just a zero, I had a products array and cart items array, and we had some components who were dealing with this shared state. So watch this video if you want to see how to implement a much complex reducer. I think that's it. Maybe so we saw a very simple example. Just try this out and play around with this. Yeah, we'll see in the next video. Thank you.